Ducks fans, are you ready? You are listening to the Ducks and Pucks podcast. This is the #1 home for Anaheim Ducks talk and analysis. Here we go.
Welcome to the show. This is your host, Mike Walters, along with my co-host, Eddie Richard, and we're back. We've been away for a little bit. The Ducks, obviously, not doing too much during the summertime, as most of the other teams aren't. But our last show, if you didn't catch it, we talked about Perry going to Dallas, and we talked about free agency a little bit. Mainly did a draft review, and we're going to talk about some of the players the Ducks did pick up. I guess a lot of players that they didn't. But I guess the real big thing that we'll start off with, Eddie, is the Ducks did go out and get Daryl Sutter and add him to the coaching staff, which everyone kind of went nuts over. What was your thought about that? And then we'll move on to all the players and what's going on with this team.
I had no issue with that at all. I actually liked bringing him in. He's a proven winner. He has 2 Stanley Cups over there with the LA Kings. One of those cups, he brought that team, barely getting in the playoffs. They were down 3-0 against San Jose in the first round of the playoffs, and he just coached their team and won a series they shouldn't have even won at all, and ended up winning the cup that year too. So I think he brings a lot of experience, and he knows how to win and could fill in an advisory role and help Dallas, coach this team. And especially if the Ducks get in a little funk or they start spiraling down, they can probably pick his brain and use his experience of how to change things around and how to, elevate the Ducks play style. I like it. It's, as long as, he's not, there just to scare Dallas about hey, if you don't perform well, you're going to be, fired and here's a replacement for you. I don't think it's that situation. He doesn't want to coach again. He's content with just being the advisory role that he is. He wants to spend time with his family. Just like we had Teemu Selanne on the show, and Teemu Selanne mentioned that being a coach is similar to being a player with all the traveling and the commitment you have to put into it. So I think it's a good signing for the Ducks, and all that experience is just gonna help the Ducks and help Dallas elevate this team and hopefully bring another cup to Anaheim.
Yeah, I agree with you. It seemed at first that people were upset. They're like, why are they bringing him in? Of course, being in LA and the Ducks playing against those teams. Those years, of course, and then the Kings winning those cups. We actually did a poll question on Twitter, and most of you thought it was a good idea. I guess, I'd say 34% of you thought it was a good idea. 8% didn't like it. And then the rest pretty much was, let's see how it goes. That was 45%. And then the remaining 15-16% was just kind of why do we bring him in? So overall, mostly it's, you're in favor for it, or you kind of want to wait and see how it goes in terms of the poll question that we did. But I think the bigger issue is not so much the whole LA connection and whatnot, as you mentioned, Eddie, but the bigger part of it is people are kind of concerned that, okay, Murray brought in Daryl Sutter shortly after bringing in Dallas Eakins as the head coach. Is this a situation where if Eakins doesn't perform this season, that Sutter will take over? And I really don't think that that's the case at all. According to the article that was in The Athletic, they talked about Sutter still going back and forth from his home in Canada and then obviously coming to help and coach the Ducks. It looks like his role is still up in the air, but when he's with the team, he's going to be a coach. I guess when he's away, he's going to kind of be more of an advisor. And they also said that Dallas reached out to bring in Sutter. So to me, I'm not really worried about him taking over the spot of Eakins if for some reason he doesn't perform. They're saying that he took over Rich Preston's role as an assistant coach with the team, and Rich is now working in a scouting capacity with the team. So I think if anything, that's what they brought him in for. I don't see Eakins having, a future replacement in Sutter, and I don't think he would go outside to get him. If anything, I think it's a good idea because he's looking at someone with experience, someone that's been there and done that. And like you said, one of those cup runs, they were the last seed and almost got eliminated the first round. They came all the way back, and then, of course, we know they went all the way painstakingly because, they're the Kings and we don't like them. But, hey, you got to give them kudos. They did, do what they did that year, and then, of course, they did it again. So, overall, I mean, it was a surprise to me, I'm not going to lie. When I heard that, I'm like, really? I thought out of everything that the Ducks had done with the free agency, which wasn't a whole lot, and we'll get into that in a little bit, that this was really the biggest pickup and probably the biggest surprise that they did. And I think it is going to help this team out, Eddie, with all the experience that Sutter has coaching in the NHL. I think it's going to rub off on Aikens for the better.
Yeah, same here. I agree. We can't go wrong with bringing in experience and having more than one brain to pick for this team. If things aren't, working out with one person, you have another person's brain you can pick, and maybe, he can add suggestions like, hey, try doing it this way, or hey, I relate to these players, better than you are. I mean, because, yeah, you are the head coach, and all the players, they have that certain respect for you, but you can't please everyone. You can't figure out, and you can't, have that connection and rapport with everyone. It's going to take other people to do it. And no matter how likable you are, there's always going to be one person that you just don't clearly see eye to eye with. So having, those extra pair of eyes, those other brains to kind of help him and guide him and get the best out of our players, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think this is probably the best move that the Ducks did make during the offseason. Unfortunately, they didn't really make a whole lot of moves with the players and whatnot. They went out in free agency, didn't do any big moves, which is kind of what we expected. But it was frustrating. A lot of people aren't happy. The Ducks didn't go out and get any big name players on offense and defense. We're also going to talk about the lineups a little bit too later in the show and what we think it's going to look like as of now. And the Ducks basically added a handful of players. They added some forwards, they added some defense, and one goalie. So they did bring back Justin Kloos and Chase DeLeo. So those two RFAs came back. They avoided arbitration with Chase. So they had those two guys. And then they brought in a handful of forwards, a couple defensemen, and a goalie. And we'll kind of talk about this right now. So they brought in Martinson, Petiela, Podorowski, and Delore, which I know is your favorite player probably, just because you like Back to the Future and the DeLorean. But anyways, we'll start out with some of these guys and talk about who they brought in and what are they going to bring to the team and whatnot. Sadly, I think a lot of this is players that are going to be replacements for the Gulls. The Ducks/Gulls organization, they lost a lot of minor league players. We'll talk about that too throughout this discussion. But they brought in Martinson. Eddie, you know a little bit about him. He did play on the Avalanche, another team that you watch closely. He's played in 152 NHL games with 23 points, 9 goals, and 14 assists. He's also played in 112 AHL games. He's a big guy, 6'3", 229 pounds, and he likes to play physical and get into the dirty areas and screen the goalies, and he likes to fight once in a while. So there is kind of that grinding type player that Murray's looked at before. But I don't know if you have any added insight from when he was with the Avalanche, but he still looks like a guy that's, if he's on the Ducks, he's a fourth liner, or he's going to be with the Gulls.
Yeah, that's exactly. I think you hit the nail on the coffin right there. He's going to be a fourth liner player, probably going to move up and down when needed, especially when those rivalry games come up against the Sharks or Kings, and we need that extra gritty physical edge, and you can bring him up. He's not the fastest of players, but he gets in those dirty areas and tries to create chances for his team. And he's not going to shy away from throwing his body around. He had 83 hits last season in 24 games that he played. I watched him a few times. I watched him scrap. I watched him throw his body around back in Colorado. So I mean, he's decent. He's a good addition to the Gulls. And maybe plug in a few games for the Ducks just to add that energy, especially when we play LA. And it seems like we want to bring that physical edge, when we play LA, just because they're our crosstown rivals. So I mean, it's not a bad signing, but it's not going to really help the Ducks too much. Besides throwing, having that physical edge to it, but you never know. Look at a player like Derek Grant. I mean, he came to the Ducks and people weren't really expecting to get a elite first line center out of him, but but he actually did. He actually doing well with the Ducks. He plays well. He had his career highs when he first came. He came back and he just does everything it's expected of him and needed, and he just helps the team. And I think it's it could benefit the Ducks a few games, but it's most likely going to bring more of an edge to the goals.
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned Grant is back. I think we talked about it on the last show, but if we didn't mention it, the Ducks brought him, Ryan Miller, and Holzer back. So you also have those, mainstays, I guess you'll say, for the team. We'll talk about how they kind of plug into the lineup as well. But some of the other forwards that the Ducks brought in, some interesting comparisons, I guess. Pietila, they're talking about him being kind of an Andrew Cogliano 2.0. He spent a lot of time with the AHL Devil team, which he led the team in scoring. He had 20 goals and 26 assists in 50 games. Nothing, bad to look at, but of course in the AHL. And they talk about him being a good forechecker, a speed guy, a guy who can create turnovers and counterattack. Where have we heard that before? Andrew Cogliano. Also a solid penalty killer as well, can play wing and center. So a lot of things going on with him. He definitely sounds like he could be Cogliano 2.0, but I just don't know if he's going to be a guy that's going to be a mainstay again for the Ducks. I think this is another player, Eddie, that, if he gets in there, maybe he squeaks in a bottom six role or fourth line, but another player that probably looks destined for the goals.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more. The Ducks lineup looks pretty clogged up in the bottom six, and we'll discuss that shortly. But I think it's going to be more of a goals transaction. There's going to be a few key players from the goals that might make their permanent roster spot in the Ducks, and we're going to need some more depth on the goals lineup and have to bolster them up because I'm pretty sure. Regardless, it's their minor league affiliate. I mean, they don't want to just go out there just to have guys skate around. That they actually want to go out there and win, and they want to build a team. So I think he'd be a good asset, and he can fill in a void of one of the players that might earn a roster spot for the Ducks next season.
Yeah, and another one in that category too, as we mentioned, Podorowski. He was with Charlotte last year. Played 72 games. Another guy that did well down there. He had 23 goals and 47 assists, and that's nothing to snuff at. 70 points in 72 games. But again, at the AHL level, he also had 23 points in 18 playoff games last season at the AHL. So he's another guy that they're bringing in. He has potential offensive upside. He's a fast skater. They talk about he has a good on ice awareness. Part of the issue, though, is his size. He's only 5'10", 190, and he's not a very physical player. So another forward that we're looking at that's probably going to bounce back and forth, mainly being San Diego. And the fourth one that came up recently that the Ducks got, mainly in a trade, your favorite, Delorier. He was traded. Basically, the Ducks got him from Montreal for a 2020 fourth-round pick. He played 48 games last year. Had 2 goals and 3 assists, and he's played in 317 total NHL games between Buffalo and Montreal with 49 points, 24 goals, and 25 assists. He can play, all the kind of wing positions. Again, another bottom 6 forward. This guy is more physical on the ice, will stick up for teammates. Sounds like maybe another fourth line type player, another grinder. They talk about him as being Jared Bull 2.0. So I know the Jared Bull fan club is, maybe brought back to revival with the Delorier Back to the Future fan club, as you like to call them. But again, Podorowski and Delorier, just like the other players we talked about, these are all guys that, Eddie, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but these are all guys that if they're going to make the Ducks, they're going to play in the bottom 6. Unless there's significant injuries, knock on wood, we don't want to have that as a repeat from last season. But these 4 guys, in terms of forwards, I just really think they're going to be with the goals for most of the season.
I really hope Delorier gets a call up here and there, especially when I attend the games. I would love to go there and get drunk off the $19 beers and just scream Delorier. Even though he's not on the ice, just scream it just so I want to be obnoxious drunk. Because I like that name, because it sounds like the whole DeLorean thing. I think scouting report says that if this guy goes 88 miles an hour, you're going to see some serious shit. I'm quoting the movie. It's one of my favorite movies. So, no, yeah, I can't really see him doing much to help the Ducks besides, bringing in a player like that when we have those, rivalry games like that. As far as between him and Martinson, they're kind of like similar players would play with that edge. It makes no sense to bring both of them up if we have injuries, so it's going to be one or the other. So if we need that, I guess not really enforcer, but a grinder type of player, then one of them are going to be called up. Podorowski's probably is one of those players that's going to be a hit or miss. He was the MVP of the playoffs. He does, he knows how to rise up to the occasion and be that leader for a team. So maybe he just does something in training camp and surprises everyone like Sherwood did last season and make the lineup for the Ducks. Maybe, we have no idea how his offseason or any of these guys' offseason are going. I know we saw Sprongson posting some videos, and it looks like he's really, really going at it and training hard this offseason. So I'm expecting something big from him next season. But you never know when training camp comes. I think a lot of these players, especially with a new coaching system, I think Dallas is probably going to select the best possible players that are going to help the team, and it might not be the popular players like someone like Sam Steele or Troy Terry that's expected to make the lineup. They could be outplayed. It seems like it's anyone's role come training camp, especially for the bottom six. The bottom six is going to be really fun to see. It's going to be difficult to tell you exactly who's going to be there, but it's kind of up in the air. Regardless if he does make it or he doesn't, I mean, we still have all these players coming back for the goals that are going to help the goals, and hopefully they can get that Calder Cup next season. I mean, that'd be great for them to win it. As they had a good run this season, and they played really well. They had a lot of young talent, which I think a few of them are going to be permanents next season with the Ducks. But it's always good to keep that, keep them bolstered up, to have these players. Just have that good team so all your other prospects around them can develop better and they can just read off each other, feed off each other's energy, and hopefully just progress and maybe make the Ducks roster and be that surprise like, hey, remember so-and-so just got signed, supposed to be the goals, and now he's, on a top 6 role scoring X amount of points. I mean, that's always fun to see. You never know how a player is going to turn out.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a level of excitement going into next season like you're talking about. You're looking at, when we're still talking about some of these newer guys that the Ducks picked up during free agency, but when we get a little bit deeper in the show and we talk about the lineup, especially for the offensive part of this team, it's going to be exciting because after the top 6, I mean, it's wide open. We'll talk about what we think some of the projected lineups may shape out to be, but really it's going to be difficult. Like you said, it's going to be open come preseason and how the players all shake out. The Ducks did add a couple more players as well on defense. Again, kind of a mix here. They had Chris Weidman and Yanni Hakapa. Weidman is kind of another one that looks more like AHL destined. Played one NHL game with Florida last year, 5 appearances in Edmonton and 19 in Ottawa. He's an offensive type defenseman. Again, another one with a good vision and everything. Good shot, but again, a smaller guy, 5'10", 183. So not a big guy by any means. Another player that's destined more for San Diego. The one that intrigues me is Hakapa from Finland. There's a lot of people that are really big on this guy. He's 27 years old, but he's 6'5". He signed a one-way deal. He's a right-handed defenseman, which the Ducks have been kind of looking for that. He's very gritty. He's hard-nosed. If you've seen the way he plays, he's also a good, solid stay-home defenseman, which the Ducks only really have Manson right now. They've tried to look to get someone else. They also said he's a good skater as well. So, this guy, I'm kind of excited. I mean, it's another one of those players like we talked about. You're looking at, are they going to be with the Ducks full-time or not? We had some fan questions on that, which we're kind of answering that throughout here, but we'll answer it when we go through the lineups. But of these new guys they picked up between the forwards and the defensemen, Eddie, he's the one that I'm kind of excited to see how he shapes out. I mean, he could be one of those guys that, he jumps in and makes that third pairing, which we'll get into the lineups, like I said, later. But of these two, between Weidman and Hakapa, I'm excited to see how Yanni will perform with the Ducks next season.
Oh, yeah, me, definitely. I love that big physical type of defenseman, or even player, not even defenseman, just that physical player. He certainly has the size going on his advantage, and he does have that right-handed shot, which the Ducks seem to need this season. I mean, he played for the one of the Finnish league last season. He had 81, or his whole career in the Finnish elite league, 81 points, 25 goals, 56 assists. He was a plus 76 though. I mean, so that's kind of important. Like, he was mostly out there and not really contributing that much offensively, but he was out there, when goals were getting scored. That means he was creating chances or moving that puck around or making that big hit and slowing down one of their players, taking away time and space from the opposing players as well. I mean, that's exactly what the Ducks need. That big physical body, that player that's gonna make you pay and gonna make those teams think twice. When they come to Anaheim, it's not gonna be like, oh, okay, we're gonna have probably the whole 20 minutes to play with the puck and score a goal because they're not gonna touch us. I think this guy seems like if you have the puck, he just sees red. He's gonna not compromise his positioning, but he's gonna make a hit when it's warranted. And it's gonna take that fraction of a second or a second from the opposing player to make that perfect play and to score a goal. So it might lead to some more turnovers. If not, it might lead to the opposing player having to quickly take a shot where one of our goalies, either Miller or Gibson, can position himself well to block, and it's not going to be one of those, those time issues. Because last season it was just crazy. The Ducks when players had the puck, the Ducks would skate at them and then wouldn't hit them. They would just kind of prance around the other way. So teams started figuring that out, and they just had a bunch of space. I think that one game against Carolina, when they were just crazy out shooting the Ducks, and they just controlled the whole game. They had the puck a player had it for 4 or 5 seconds at a time, just waiting to make the perfect pass, waiting for the opposing player to get set up, and it was just crazy. So I think he has a good chance of making the team. Obviously with the size and his experience playing in the Finnish Elite League, and his age too. He's older. He's more mature. So maybe he's learned a lot of things when that a 21-year-old or a 20-year-old coming in, doesn't have a chance to really make those mistakes and learn. So I think I'm excited about this one. I just if he can make the roster and he can contribute, and I think he can be a physical force and he can actually be a factor with the Ducks. And it's going to be cool to see a guy that isn't afraid to throw his body around. We lost that last season with Manson. He was that kind of player. But last season, it just seemed like he didn't really want to hit anyone or engage. So hopefully we just bring that back to the Ducks. And yeah, you know what? I was the one that liked the AKA name, the Dirty Ducks. I like that name because those dirty plays, not injury type of plays, but those kind of hard hitting, open eyes, clean, dirty, quote unquote hits. I mean, that's what we need in the game, and that's what wins games at times.
Yeah, I think that was a key point you mentioned in there was about the goalie situation. The Ducks basically, hanging Gibson out to dry pretty much, every game last season. I mean, sadly, I mean, very, very frustrating. So if this guy, Yanni, can come in there and be another stay-home type defenseman, like a Manson, and you talk about Manson was not quite where he was before, but if he can, be that kind of a player, that's going to help the Ducks out even better, because that was a huge issue for the team, is that they relied on Gibson so much, especially early on in the season. Of course, he went out. Then they had Miller, which, the Ducks did bring him back. Thank God. That was one of the big ones you and I said the Ducks need to bring back. The other part of this equation is they need to play Miller more. He needs to get in there and get in some more games. I mean, you're talking about the all-time American-born win leader. So here you go. Put him in there. He's also the man when it comes to shootouts. So he needs to get some games in there. Gibson needs to have some rest. But you're right. The Ducks do need to play stronger defense as well in front of him. And the Ducks did go out and they got one more goaltender. Kind of a surprise. Really the only other player they added, Anthony Stolars. They signed him to a 2-year deal, $750,000 each year. He played with the Flyers and the Oilers, 25 NHL games, 908 save percentage, and around a 3 goals against average. I'm not really sure why they did this move. This is probably the most puzzling one out of all of them. Maybe to bring some depth back down the goals, or if something happens, knock on wood, like we said, we don't want anything with Gibson or Miller to happen, or any of the other goalies for that matter, or any player. But that's the only thing I can think of, is just to add some more depth at goalie, either with the goals or maybe in the the farm system in general. I don't know. It's kind of a puzzling move, but they brought him in too, Eddie. And looking at the lineup with the Ducks, which we'll go into in just a sec, the Ducks have added depth in every area, but I think the fans are kind of nervous because you look at all these players they added, and a lot of these players are refilling goals players that the Ducks, let go. We just heard recently that the Maple Leafs just picked up a couple of the Ducks players. Kosela's gone now. He's over there. You remember Auberg, the Ducks traded him away. He was available. He got picked up. We've seen Kevin Waugh go to the wayside and a few of the other goals players go. So I think there's some nervousness with the Ducks because with the way that this free agency went and the way they picked up players, you're relying on a lot of youth to help out this Ducks team. You have Dallas Aikens in there who understands a lot of these younger players. So that part seems good. But then it seems with the goals, it's a little bit nervous time because, how's it going to figure out if most of the players from that team in San Diego are now going to be with the Ducks or they've gone the wayward to other teams now. The goal season is going to be interesting come next year.
Yeah, it's gonna. I guess they weren't part of the future plans or whatnot. I don't, or maybe they wanted to go. I have no idea. Some of those signings, especially Auberg, he did well with the Ducks. I know they had some issues with him, and I guess the coaching and him. I don't know what really happened or what was going on with him. But I was actually going to be pretty excited if he got re-signed and see what he can contribute to the Ducks next season. Or, I don't know. It's weird. It's going to be a weird direction where they're going. With the goalie-wise, Stolarz, that was kind of confusing to me too, and it's kind of puzzling. I mean, we had, we have goalies that need to be in the AHL and get those experience playing. The article I think that Thomas wrote too about what's his name again, Mike? I totally forgot. I'm blanking out.
Which one?
The article you posted today, Thomas wrote about the goalie.
Eckerson.
Yes, yeah, I expected him to be the goals backup next season, but with Stolarz coming, the article said, he's probably going to have a chance to go down to the ECHL, and I don't think that's going to benefit him much. I think Stolarz, just to kind of justify it, maybe he was brought in because Gibson has had the injury issues. I don't know, Miller as well had issues last season. I know he just brought in there just to have a goalie with a little bit more NHL experience that can hold a backup role. I'm just trying to justify why they brought him, and I really can't because a backup role, a potential starting role, if both goalies get injured, knock on wood, that doesn't happen. But just that was a really awkward or puzzling signing for me. I think you mentioned before, or I think we talked about it, maybe there's a trade brewing with one of our goalies, so he'll be needed, but it just, that signing kind of throws me off. Maybe they're just trying to have that extra thing to give Gibson some time off so Gibson doesn't feel that much pressure to have to be in net each and every game and play that exceeding time that he's been last season. And I don't know. I'm just trying to, off the top of my head, justify why they have this goalie. And I had my notes right here, but it just really diving down and thinking about it, this signing doesn't make sense at all to me.
Yeah, I think the only other thing that you were talking about is maybe a trade down the road. I mean, that's the only other thing I can think of, other than, like you said, some farm system depth. So that's what the Ducks did in free agency. Not a whole lot. Not a lot of excitement. Not a lot of people are, irritated with some of the players that were let go. And then they picked up some guys. A couple of them, like we said, are a little bit exciting to see. But overall, it leaves you in the position where I'm excited for the Ducks. I still think they're going to be a good team next season. But it kind of makes you wonder, okay, well, how's San Diego going to go? Because a lot of these guys are going to have to come up. And that's where we can dive into the lineups, basically. A lot of you had questions about, okay, you have Dallas now as the coach. How are the lineups going to pan out? So we'll kind of break it down a little bit for you. Like we've already talked about the goalies. There's not really a whole lot to talk about there. We all know it's Gibson and Miller. That's pretty much done. But when it comes to the forwards and the defense, it's kind of a jumble. So we'll start out with, offensively for the Ducks, how they'll look. And we'll go with my kind of projected lineup and Eddie's, which both of these aren't really solid because it's just the way it is. But now this is also assuming that Kessler's out next season, and Eves, which we heard is most likely going to retire or be on the LTIR for the rest of the season. So you're not counting those two. If they somehow miraculously come out and play this year, then great. But we're looking at this without those two. So Looking at the top line, I'm looking at Raquel, Getzlaf, and Kasse. Second line, Comtois, Henrique, and Silverberg. A third line of Jones, Steele, and Terry. And then the fourth line of whoever you want to name on the Ducks that's left and put them in. The fourth line, I mean, there's a whole bunch. You could have Richie, Sprong, probably two of the ones that'll be in there. Shore, Rowney, Grant, as we talked about, that came back. You have Lundstrom, too, in the mix, possibly. Delorier, which would make Eddie very, very happy as well. The bottom four is just, I don't know, it could be whatever. But that's my top 9 I'm looking at. Maybe Sprong jumps up in there. I think, Eddie, you have him in your top 9. But what do you think as far as the 12 players that would be on the forward lines?
Yeah, I think the top 6 is kind of easy. We can just rearrange some names here and there. But my top 6 goes as following. Have at left wing Raquel, Getzlaf, and Sprong. Second line, Comtois, Henrique, Silverberg. Third line, Richie, Steele, and Kasse. And then fourth line, I have between Jones and Lundstrom, Grant and Terry. Rowney and Shore, I think, I don't know. I've been trying to plug them in and see where they can fit. I think they're kind of the odd men out. I don't know if I still have like Cogliano MV, but that trade with Shore still doesn't make sense to me. And I just don't see where he's going to fit in this lineup. Especially if we want to get, he has, the speed too, but I just can't see him being that much of a factor when we have the names mentioned that can take those spots. Hopefully we don't start the season with any injuries where we had the last few seasons, because, that'd be a blow, and definitely those 2 players will insert there. But I think that, the whole bottom 6 can go either way, a different direction. I mean, it could be some of those new people we picked up, Martinson or Podorowski, can just jump in that bottom 6 too. It's really ambiguous. We have no idea what's going to happen with the bottom 6, and even with Kasse too. Kasse's coming, he's going to start fresh. Hopefully he's healthy the whole season. I mean, he could just be swapped with Sprong, and Sprong could be on the third line, and Kasse could be on that top line with Getzlaf. We have no idea what's going to go. But I mean, that's my prediction, my lineup that can possibly happen for forwards.
Yeah, you mentioned Kasse, and that's an interesting one there. The Athletic had an article on him talking about him having a breakout season this year. I think he's definitely one player to watch. Hopefully he's all good from the concussion issues that he had. And I really want to look at Comtois too. I think of the newer guys, he's well-rounded as far as scoring offensively, being able to get in on the forecheck and play a physical game as well. I also want to keep an eye on Troy Terry. He had that leg issue at the end of the season, at the very end, unfortunately. So I want to see how he comes back as well. And Sprong, he's another one that I want to watch and see. As you said, he's got the videos out there, and he's really been working hard. So there's a lot of potential in this forward lineup for players to step up and break out. And it's a really young lineup. If you think about it, you have Grandpa Getzlaf in there. He's the old guy, so to speak, in this lineup. But, I mean, it's a fast lineup. A lot of young guys, a lot of talent, guys that can skate and move the puck, the things that Dallas Aikens wants to see on this team, Murray wants to see on this team. That's what I'm excited about. Any of these forward guys, I mean, obviously I mentioned some, but any of those that stick out to you, Eddie, that you're thinking might have a breakout season next year? As
far as the rookies, Comtois, I think he's an all well-rounded player. He played with so much swag last season. He felt like he belonged there. When you watched him play, it's like, he's not a rookie. He seems really comfortable around him. He wasn't shy to put his body around. He wasn't shy to be out there and take the puck and shoot it on net. He looked really good out there. He was a big surprise, I think, for a lot of Ducks fans. And I really hope that he can, he continues his progress and he can crack the lineup and stay, because I think he'll be a big factor. I mean, who knows? Maybe a superstar one day. Superstars come in all shapes and forms, and they come from either getting drafted first overall or being undrafted at times, so you never know. Costello has been my favorite for last season as a breakout player. I remember we talked about this on last year's podcast when we talked about breakout players for the season, and Costello was one of my favorites. Unfortunately, he was plagued with injuries. He wasn't doing too bad this season, though. It's rare that he had a dry spell. He was pretty much consistent on getting a goal or an assist, or he was a plus in games. So he did pretty well. And unfortunately, he had that surgery, and he was out for the remainder of the season. And then another one, too, that just pops up, too, is Sprong. Just seeing how much he's working at it and training, it seems like he has, like, a chip on his shoulder, like, for some reason, come next season. So, yeah, it's going to be fun to see him and see what he can do. I just, it's going to be interesting. He's seen those three guys, but if I have a betting man, I put my money on anyone, I'm going to say Comtois will probably be a breakout player for the Ducks next season, and he's going to be a really great player. And if he continues the way he's doing, he could potentially. I can see him being a superstar one day, just the way he plays.
Yeah, I think we talked about that before on previous shows during the season when he got sent back down for good last year. And I agree with you. Of the young forwards, I think that's one of the guys you definitely got to watch. So, like we said, on offense, the top six pretty much set. Bottom six, not so much. A lot to be decided come opening night in October. The bigger question for me, though, Eddie, is the defense. Yeah, it's going to be tough, I think. Since the Ducks didn't go out and get any big-name guys, they did get back Del Zotto. I don't think I mentioned that earlier in the show. You remember he gets traded, he goes to the Blues, wins the Stanley Cup, and now he's back with the Ducks. So, whirlwind season for him. So the Ducks do have him added on the defensive core, but you're looking at your top guys. You have Lindholm and Manson, Larson and Fowler. Most likely that's your top four. Maybe Larson gets bumped out of there. Who knows? But outside of that, you're going with your bottom pairings. You've got Gooley in the mix. As I said, Del Zotto. You have Holzer. The Ducks did bring back. We all know that he's usually in there as the 6th or 7th defenseman. He doesn't change his role, so that's kind of a known. And then Hakapa as well, if he can somehow squeeze in there. So I don't know how those defensive pairings are going to work out. I'm a little nervous because it sounds like they can get the top four set, but after that, your third pairing might be suspect. And it goes back to the point we talked about. I don't want to see Gibson getting overworked, and I don't want to see the top four getting overworked, but that may be something the Ducks are going to have to deal with in the beginning of the season. Like we said, they've got $8 million in cap space right now, and they haven't gone out and picked up anybody, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but that's how I have my defensive pairing shaking out, barring the Ducks picking up somebody, Eddie.
Yeah, mine as follows. It's of course we're going to have Fowler at the top defenseman, and then I have either Weidman, which is a right shot defenseman, or Larson, but he shoots left. But I think Larson's due for a breakout season as well. Lindholm and Manson, I think that's kind of the favorite pairing that and kind of most likely what we'll see come opening night. And then I have Gooley and Del Zotto for the bottom three. And, of course, Holzer thrown in there. But Holzer's one of those players where you can throw in anywhere. I think he would, give it his all and try his best playing any position except goaltending. But who knows, with a player like Holzer, if it came down to it, he might put the pads on and try to stop pucks. I mean, it's crazy. Weidman, he's one of those players that just a little inconsistent. He's he has that offensive capability, but really hasn't sprouted out. Maybe he's one of those players like a Derek Grant kind of player. Like he comes to the Ducks and we can get the best out of him, and maybe him and Fowler will just be that perfect that line right there, and they can feed off each other. Maybe he can feed him the puck more or back and forth. Maybe Weidman's one of those players that likes to shoot more, and then like I said prior to this show, who knows what his off-season training is going about. Maybe he's trying to better himself. Gooley's going to be, he's one of the favorites to make the roster, especially with that trade. And the games we saw him last season, he looked pretty good. He skated well, so hopefully, he can contribute. Del Zotto is interesting. I'm glad he's back, and I really hope he has success in Anaheim. I know he wore number 44, if I'm not mistaken, and that's my hockey number, and that's my favorite number. So, I mean, if he can contribute and be a factor for the Ducks, I wouldn't mind getting a 44 jersey. I've been wanting one for a while. And I don't want a Rob Niedermeyer jersey. I'll go over that, on my personal Twitter account if you want to know why. But, Del Zotto's, he scored 37 points this first season. He had 41 points in 2011, 2012. You look down his stats, 32 points. He's an offensive player. He's just looking for hopefully he gets that little spark again. And like I said, the Ducks have a way of bringing these, players that are kind of dead and getting some life out of them. So hopefully he can just find a rejuvenated spot and have that spark again, and everything clicks right for him. And hopefully, maybe score 25 points, maybe 30 points next season for the Ducks. I think that'd be great if he can do that.
So, we talk about the defense, like you said, bringing in Del Zotto, maybe one that helps. Yanni from Finland, of course. Some of the fan questions that we had too is, if the Ducks will go pick up anybody else to help out this team. So, looking at some of the free agents, I don't see the Ducks doing anything in terms of forwards. I don't really see them picking up anybody. Maybe on defense they try to get some guys. If looking at some of the free agents that are still out there, for you, Eddie, are there any defensemen that you would like the Ducks to maybe pursue, even if we don't know if they really will pursue them?
Bring back Jake Gardner. He technically bring him back. He was drafted by the Ducks. He ended up sent to Toronto on a trade. I think it brought Boschman back to the Ducks. I think he'd be a great asset. He scored 30 points last season. He's been criticized a lot about his defensive play, but we all know how the Canadian media is and how players are scrutinized. So I think with a non-Canadian team and an American team that has that less scrutiny and less pretty much pointing the finger and blaming one particular player for your team's failures, I think he can thrive. Yeah, he shoots his left shot, which the Ducks kind of don't need right now. But I think given the right adjustments and given the lower micromanaging, I guess, from the media and the fans, I think he can be an asset to the Ducks. And if we can get him at under $4 million. And a right price and term, I think that'll be great. I don't want the Ducks to go out there and spend $6 million and sign him for 6 years, something like that. It's just crazy because it's not going to work out. Hopefully like a small little bridge for him just to see how he plays out and see if he can focus or not focus, but he can work out with the team. And definitely not this no movement, no trade clause, because if it's not working out, I would like the Ducks to move forward from him. A couple other names I'll mention just because I've seen them posted on social medias. Patrick Maroon is the forward, but like you said, we're not really going after forwards. Maroon's not going to come back to Anaheim, and if he does, it's going to be something way out of left field or whatever they call it in baseball. It's going to be really rare. I think he's going to probably accept a lower deal to sign with St. Louis, and St. Louis wants to sign their RFAs first. So I think we can scratch him. And then another name I saw was Brian Boyle. Yeah, Boyle will be great. He plays left and center, 6'6", 240 pounds, a big guy. But I think with this team and the transition they're doing, him being 34, I don't think they're going to want to commit too much money or have a player to clog up even more the bottom six that that we have open, and that's really pretty much jam-packed like the 10 freeway or 57 freeway. So that's pretty much it I have for free agents, Mike, unless you have a few others.
Just a couple that I've seen on there. I highly doubt these guys come to the Ducks, but defensively, you've got Nicholas Kronwall out there. You got Dan Girardi. I highly doubt the Ducks go after him. Kind of what you talked about. You're talking about guys that are in the mid to late 30s. But if you're looking at guys to bring in for maybe some, veteran experience and maybe sign to a 1-year deal, they're out there. You can get them for maybe $2 million or so. According to their last contracts, and they both played high minutes. Kronwall played almost 20 minutes and Girardi almost 18. So they're nothing to snuff at, but they probably don't fit into the Ducks plan here because they keep getting younger and younger on this team. But if they did want to add somebody with a veteran presence to help the defensive core, those guys are out there. I am curious to see where they land. I'm also curious to see, like you said, Patrick Maroon. I really want to know where he's going to go. I would think he would take another deal and stay in St. Louis, like you said, but they got to figure out the RFA situation there. and I doubt he comes back. I really don't see the Ducks getting any other kind of forwards. But the Ducks, like we said, they got $8 million flowing out there, and they still have the LTIR too, which they can double it with Eves and Kessler. They can make it up to $16 million. So, I don't rule out the possibility that they don't go pick up somebody, but knowing how Murray is, usually once everything's done after a few days of the free agency, there's really not a whole lot of movement after that. So I think the Ducks are kind of done for the summer. But, hey, Daryl Sutter's now on the coaching staff, so you never know if someone else pops up here in the month of August or September. I'm not holding my breath, but I'm just saying, keep an eye out on some of these free agents to see where they land. The other, fan question, kind of some news that came up too. We had Ronald asked us about the third jersey, the quote-unquote new third jersey, which we all heard was pretty much going to be the orange jersey again. About a year ago, that was kind of the rumor. Someone posted it on Twitter and then took it down. It was from the Adidas website. Ronald is asking us our thoughts on it. Me personally, I'm not that happy about it. I like that jersey. Nothing against that jersey, but it looks just like the old one. Maybe a little bit different around the collar, but they're gonna slap on an Adidas logo and instead of a Reebok, and there you go. Like I said, I like the jersey. I just wish they would have done something a little bit different. But I think, Eddie, you're in the same boat. We're going to at least save some money and not buy that jersey.
Yeah, it looks exactly the same as the Reebok one. I mean, yeah, a little difference that Phil posted out, that posted about, I guess a little less orange and how the D's are moved up more. And I noticed the collar is different. It's all black, but I mean, come on. I mean, you guys have a new sponsor, Adidas. You're pretty much taking Reebok's thing and slapping an Adidas logo on it. I'd want more thought and effort put into it. Maybe something just different and not just the same. I mean, I love those orange jerseys. They're great. I mean, I wouldn't want them to be full time, which I know it's like a debate going on still if they should go to all orange. And no, I like the black jersey. I like our home and away jerseys. I have no issue with them at all. But I just think, they could have made it a little more different. I mean, a lot of the fans want the eggplant jersey back. Maybe, the black and the eggplant color with that old school logo or something different. But, I mean, it's just kind of disappointing that expecting a brand new third jersey next season, and it's pretty much going to be the same with minor tweaks and then an Adidas logo. But like you said, I get to save money. I'm planning to go to the Stadium Series in Colorado against the Kings. Boo Kings! But I mean, I could spend more money over there on whatever I do over there. If not, I can spend more money at Honda Center now buying their $19 beers, the Golden Road beers.
Well, there is one update, too, if you missed it with the Honda Center as well. They did replace the seats in the 200 level, so they're all black, and they're working on the 300 level and the 400 level, which is probably going to come in the next, I think they said, year or two. So there's that little update that's going on at Honda Center. I'm up in the nosebleeds, so I don't know when I'll see that, but at least they're doing that. So there is that change coming at the arena. And then, like we said, they're bringing back, most likely it's not confirmed, but that orange jersey for the third. I don't think they're changing up anything with their home and away jerseys, but, we'll keep our eye on it. And I guess one other thing we had a couple poll questions we did. We did the one with Sutter we talked about. And this is probably the rant part of the show. we did a poll question on Eddie's favorite guy, Ken Campbell, the Hockey News. But we talked about Del Zotto and the Blues. They won the Stanley Cup. Well, the Blues, some of the players decided to, celebrate eating meatballs, spaghetti, and whatnot out of the Stanley Cup. And oh boy, Ken got upset again about something. He was upset before about Michael Liambis talking about how he shouldn't be in hockey and whatnot. But we did a poll question to see what you guys thought about the Stanley Cup and how you should celebrate. So we asked, should there be some kind of restriction or limit to the way players celebrate? And we had only 6% of you said yes. 47% said no, and then the other option, which was the kind of the comedy option, was why is this even a question? That's what the other 47% of you said. So I'm going to give the floor to Eddie here. I know he loves Ken Campbell and would really like to share his feelings about him right now. So Eddie, what did you think? Ken going off again on another non-issue, I guess you could say.
So I wonder where Ken Campbell was when the Capitals won the Stanley Cup in Vegas, because I'm pretty sure there was some craziness going on there. I think they took the cup to the strip club, so I guarantee there was a lot more going on than a dog eating spaghetti out of that cup. And he's just complaining about this right now. I mean, like, come on, a dog eating spaghetti? Like, what's this guy's problem? These players won the Stanley Cup, and they have they worked hard for it, and they gave it their all. I mean, players have played with broken bones, torn this, torn that. Players lose teeth, and they still come out and play and give it their all. Chara, I'm pretty sure this season, Chara was going through a hell of a lot of injuries. Even when he was out, he still came back on the bench to sit in full equipment with his team to support it. I think Ken Campbell's just, like I said, a bitter person that hates his life and hates, the world, and wants everyone around him just to feel just negative. And I thought I was the most negative person, but you know what? Compared to Ken Campbell, I'm like a Care Bear or something. I think I'm like Mr. Positive compared to him. I think it's time for him to go. I think he's a cancer to the sport of hockey. And it's disgusting that he's editor-in-chief of the Hockey News. He all he does is rant about how he hates fighting in hockey, how he hates hard hitting. I'm pretty sure if he were in our locker room, he'd hate everyone that talks locker room talk. It's just, I don't understand what's wrong with this guy. He probably goes home to his empty little house and sits in a blank room and stares at the wall and complains about the patterns of the wall, turns on the TV to just have static because, God forbid, anything of value comes on the TV, he'll complain about. I mean, I think it's time for him to just get the hell out of hockey. All you do is complain about it. I don't know. I would say go follow a sport like golf if you want to be that boring, but Happy Gilmore might come and kick your ass. I don't know. My rant's over, but I'm like the old school, like I love the physical play, and I believe if you work that hard, you can, pretty much do anything within the legal right to have fun with that cup. I mean, the keeper of the cup does a fantastic job keeping it shiny, and I'm pretty sure he cleans and details and sanitizes that, and I'm pretty sure he's seen a lot more than strip clubs and dogs eating spaghetti out of that, and it's great. It's a great piece of hockey. It's still respectable regardless of what you do, and I think if you have the opportunity and you have the skill set and you're part of that team to win it, and then, like I said, within legal means, you can pretty much do whatever you want with it. It's sad that he just consistently, and even when I posted on social media, I shared it to Ducks Nation, people were asking, why is this even a conversation? And I had to send the link, and one guy said, "Oh, Ken Campbell, enough said." Like, it's just a trend going on. But yeah, this is my end rant. I'm pretty sure in a few months Ken Campbell will complain about how the ice is too cold, or they shouldn't serve beer in an arena or something like that. Who knows? That guy just needs to he needs to get a couple lives, because obviously the one he's living is not really beneficial to anyone, but I guess Mr. Negative over there.
Yeah, I mean, the Stanley Cup, hello, it's you win it and your name gets on it. You don't get that in the other sports, baseball, basketball, football, right? You also get to, take the cup, home or wherever you want for a brief period of time as a player. I mean, there's a lot of, things that make the Stanley Cup special in terms of team sports trophies. Unique, yeah, of course. So, maybe Ken Campbell hasn't seen Lady and the Tramp. I don't know. He didn't like he didn't like the remake by the St. Louis Blues. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't watch movies like you said. He listens to static. I don't know. I'm not going to rant about him. He's a waste of my time. But I know. I just thought it was funny. We brought up that poll question. I wanted to see what people thought, and like we figured, over 90% were like, "Who gives a crap?" Or why is this even a question, basically? So with that, we'll kind of wind up the show here. I guess we'll kind of talk about predictions for the season next year. It's early. It's July. You're probably on vacation somewhere, hopefully having a nice drink, or maybe you're at least not at home, enjoying the summer and whatnot. But there's a lot up in there with this team. The Gulls do have a new coach as well that was announced, Kevin Dineen, a guy who's done pretty well at some levels in the NHL. He also did well at Team Canada in the Olympics. And I think he's a good choice that the Ducks did bring in to replace Dallas Eakins down in San Diego. So I think with this team, I think the Ducks will make the playoffs next year. Based upon what I'm seeing, I think some of the young players on offense will step up and contribute, and I think that they will play better and hopefully, knock on wood, not have injuries as much as they did in the last 2 seasons. With the goals, I don't know. It's a question mark. I think it's tough. You have this new coach coming in who's done all right, like I said, but with a lot of these players from the goals going up to the Ducks and not a lot of backfill, basically, has kind of been the theme of this show. I really don't know how the goals are going to do next season. I don't know if they'll even make the playoffs. It's going to be tough with, the likes of Steele and Terry and Jones and Comtois and all these guys most likely up with the Ducks full time. So that's the way I look at it. I think Ducks make the playoffs and the goals don't. I know it's a super early prediction. There's a whole lot of things can happen, but that's what I kind of see, Eddie. How do you think the two teams are going to shake out next season?
I think the Ducks, it's going to be really unpredictable for the Ducks. I think all this youth and speed will pay off. It's paid off for the Coyotes. They almost made the playoffs last season with the roster they have. It's paid off for the Colorado Avalanche, one of the younger teams as well, and they made the playoffs consecutive seasons in a row. I think these younger players are going to step up to the plate. Or to the ice. My bad. I don't know why I'm making baseball references like I'm a baseball fan. But I think they're going to step up and they're going to elevate their game. And I think everyone's just going to benefit from the new system. And the speed's going to come in there. And a lot of teams are going to come to Anaheim or play Anaheim and not expect what they're going to get from this team. And this team's just going to come out firing. They're going to underestimate them. And I think it's just going to pay in favor of the Ducks. I don't think they're going to be a President's Trophy winner next season. I think they're not going to be a wild card either. They'll squeak in the middle somewhere and make the playoffs, especially with these younger kids. And I really think the younger kids are really going to step up. And you're going to have players that you didn't think that were going to be a factor, like the Sprong or, like someone like, I think Grant's going to have a career season. Yeah, he's not going to be scoring 60, 70 points, maybe a 30-point season for Grant, but he's going to get in those areas and make everyone around him better and create chances, even if it's just like creating, a turnover or something like that, or being in the right position to get players to migrate toward his direction and have another player have the opportunity to get a puck on the net. It just things like that. I think this team's in a click. The only thing that worries me is the defense. And as far as the goals, I think we brought enough depth and we've got enough players that are able to fill in the voids that are going to be left by the players that left. Like I said, I don't see the goals being I don't know what their top President's Trophy guys winner top team for the AHL trophy is called, but I think they'll be probably within the top of their division, and they'll get in the playoffs. And hopefully, with the players that we brought in and the experience they had from last season, they can actually go and win the Calder Cup. And I'll say it right now, my prediction for the goals is probably win the Calder Cup. I know it differs from you, but I think some of these players, that we brought in and the other players that are still continuing with them, I think they'll build off that and they'll make each other better. And with the new coaching system they have down there, it's maybe probably similar with Dallas as well. And they can go, hopefully all the way. I mean, we're Ducks, our goals, we go all the way. I try to make it rhyme, but it really didn't rhyme. But